I was laughed at pretty wholeheartedly by most of Wall Street and most of the world. And the only people who didn't laugh
were people in community.
Thank you for joining us for this candid conversation on the power of community and capitalism. Please welcome James Rhee and Saket Soni.
I feel like we should shake hands.
We should.
We just met. So this is literally like a first conversation. That's why he's sitting all the way here. I'm sitting all the way over
We'll move
here.
closer together as the conversation goes, depending on how it goes.
Yeah. So hello, everyone. From New Orleans, from the JFF Horizons 2023 Summit. I'm James Rhee, and this is
Saket Soni.
And together we are the first B-Lab Candid Conversation of today. So my background, very briefly, I am an impact investor, and I chair entrepreneurship at Howard as well, and I teach at MIT. And I ran a company that did a lot of work similar, but in a different way. But I think there's a lot of parallels in the private sector that used a lot of community dynamics to make some change. And how about you, Saket?
And I'm a labor organizer. I run an organization called Resilience Force. We are made up of the workers who rebuild cities and homes and schools after disasters, so after floods and fires and hurricanes. So that workforce is organized into a national force, and we train, protect, and deploy these workers. I'm thrilled to be in this conversation with you, James, because there's just so much that we're learning from the private sector and private sector innovation, and you're right there on the front lines of innovation. So thrilled to be here with you.
Yeah, me too. So what we just learned together is that I am a recently elected Ashoka Fellow from the private sector, and you're a recently elected Ashoka Fellow from the impact sector. And so we're talking about convergence, which may mean we're going to sit closer together on the couch as these 20 minutes go. So I read your interview with Constanza, who's my friend too, and she interviewed me as well for Fortune. So this community building, let's talk about this. So you describe what you're doing through your work at Resilience Force. One of the stories you said in the Fortune article that really struck me was that just the repairing of someone's roof that didn't want any help, and then it ended up bridging people together in a way that you couldn't even have expected. Maybe you could share that with the audience.
Sure. This is what happens after disasters. Now, disasters are not good things. If you've been through one, they're tragic, they're awful. I'm not a great believer in disasters being metaphors or silver linings. For the people involved, they're terrible events, but they provide these extraordinary openings for cooperation and for changing minds. And one of the stories that I always remember is a family in Florida that had its roof blown away by a hurricane in an unincorporated town, put up a sign that said, "Strangers will be shot. Strangers will be shot." That family was so scared. The only thing separating them from the world was this sign. They were just afraid of anybody who might come close to their house, their roofless house. Well, one Sunday, a group of strangers arrived at their house. It was us with our members. And the strangers were Honduran and Mexican and Peruvian workers from around the world who were all immigrants in the United States and who were part of this workforce. And we offered to rebuild their house. We did. And afterwards, in gratitude, the family made us dinner. And over that dinner, a conservative family in Florida, who previously thought their number one electoral issue was building a wall to keep immigrants out, was expressing hope and gratitude and partnership with these immigrants. And after dinner, they took that sign down. I think that's an example of what can happen after disasters.
I love that. Wall became a roof, and then the sign came down.
That's right.
It's lovely.
That's right.
I ended up doing something, it's just to piggyback off this, is in some ways, about 10 years ago, I was one of the people who was knocking on a door of a community that didn't look anything like me and asking if I could be of assistance in helping them put a roof back up over their head. So I lived in Boston. This is what I look like, and people have tried to put me in a box for many, many years as a private equity Asian guy who went to Harvard. And so I spent most of my 40s working across the country with what ended up turning out to be, it's without exaggeration, is millions of black women sort of reinventing a company called Ashley Stewart. So it was a business that it makes sense, right? It failed for 22 years under a current configuration of systems. So we just wrote a different set of algorithms and org theory and pulled it out of the systems and rebuilt it from scratch and then reconnected it back in. And I think it's the same thing, is that I was laughed at pretty wholeheartedly by most of Wall Street and most of the world. And the only people who didn't laugh were
people in community.
Were the women in the communities, and they really embraced me, and it was I'll be forever grateful that I just didn't look the part, didn't have any experience doing it, and we ended up doing it for most of my 40s.
So one of the things I find really compelling about your work is you put a value on things that aren't usually valued, right? Things that are ineffable, things that are thought unquantifiable, become part of your calculus of how something will succeed.
Well, you're doing
goodwill.
that too. It's a lot of the work that it's from social entrepreneurs or people on the front lines, teachers, primary care physicians. You have to be there to see it. You can't see any of it in a spreadsheet. You can't see of it in a policy document. You have to be there. And so I saw it, just like the work you're doing. You're seeing these are real people. You're seeing the connectivity. A lot of the capital markets, you don't see it anymore. And people, a lot of them don't want to see it, actually. And so what I saw, wow, fundamentally what I saw was the friendship and the social capital. But what I really saw was that these women reminded me an awful lot of my mother. Mm-hmm. I'd seen the same patterns of just living in this country taking a toll on women. I saw it my whole life. And a lot of times what happens is that the people who are taking the toll, they tend to blame themselves, right? They're like, it must be me. And so a lot of the work was seeing it, explaining the systems, which is why we started a school basically in the company to teach accounting, finance theory, org theory, all of it, and saying it's not you, it's designed this way. Mm-hmm. And then we took a lot of and I don't want to get into like geeky accounting and finance, but a lot of the ways money is organized, it does not account for something that I call goodwill. It doesn't impact your earnings. So if it doesn't impact your earnings, money doesn't look at it. It doesn't value it. And so that's what we fixed. We created a new accounting system that accounted for goodwill. We created our own rules. Does that make sense? So that's one of the things that as these sectors merge, I mean, we're just talking about people, right? People, it's the rules of finance have to be more humane. And it's not just a theory, it's also you have to change the accounting rules. And then you'll see differences.
So what does that counsel for when you look at the big question for our talk, the future of community and the future of capitalism? Are you hopeful that systems like the ones you piloted can be adopted, scaled into an entire economy so that markets can work for ordinary people?
Yeah, where I'm starting right now, the reason why I'm spending more of my time in the classroom right now and with organizations like Ashoka and being here, it's I've been teaching this class. It's called Systems of Money, Life, and Joy at Duke Law School for 10 years. And I put it to work at Ashley Stewart and said, will it work? So picture a class that teaches like neuroaccounting, like cog-sci, biology, law in one class at the same time. So like before we quit on people and quit on systems, I would like for us to actually expose people to a proper education and give them agency. And so that's where I'm starting. A lot of people, they're not exposed to any of this information. It's really at a certain group of people that have all this information. So what I'm trying to do is, can I teach it at Howard? Can I teach it at MIT? Can I teach? And that's what I've been working on, and that's where the book is. It's a manifestation of those learnings, a lot of them from students, saying, that's what I'm doing.
That sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, we are, so a little bit of a parallel. We're, we've been working with people who rebuild after disasters for well over a decade. And at the heart of their knowledge of how to do it, at the heart of their efficacy, is not only an incredible amount of skill, but a deep sense of vocation. So we're training workers on how to do the work, but a lot of training systems in the United States stop at the how and never get to the why. Why should we do this work? Why are we doing it this way? Why should we move into more sustainable ways of living so that these disasters don't occur? And teaching that and, connecting people to a sense of vocation has been as important as the skills.
What's been the biggest impediment for you? Like, what's some of the challenges that you're facing, and just sort of saying, I don't understand why people can't see this?
Well, the biggest challenge I think we're facing is that the way that government and the private sector run disaster recovery right now, it's really stacked against poor people, stacked against poor people, rural people, Black and brown people. And as a result, poor and low-income people who are already worse off in the disaster get poorer as a result of the recovery. Recoveries are robberies. Recoveries are meant almost to take money away from those who are not already wealthy. Meanwhile, if you're already wealthy, if you're already, for example, a white homeowner, you are designed to get help from that system. Money flows towards you and away from others. So that inequity is, I think, at the heart of the problem right now. It's very hard to build back affordable housing stock. It's easier to build back luxury hotels in the system we have right now. That's a problem that we're trying to find constantly private sector partners to overcome. Private sector partners who see that in the long term, rebuilding affordable housing is actually just as important as rebuilding the luxury hotel, if not more.
Are you also institutionalizing like the training in terms of how to build? And
that's right.
So how are you doing that? And how is that community coming together? Is that a physical community with a digital learning place supplement, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, it is. It's a physical community. So we follow workers who follow storms and fires. We embed with that community after hurricanes and floods. And in the off season, we bring them together for skill building and training. So imagine a large, portable, in-person and digitized apprenticeship program that follows people from city after city, and then meets them at home in the off season. So we're building them year-round as resilience workers.
It's like a traveling theater economics with a built-in community education that.
That's right.
In some ways, yeah.
And actually, I have a theater degree, so it's a very apt metaphor.
I didn't know that, and so he just gave me a look like, you've done your research. I actually didn't know that.
My parents are the only the first parents in the history of India to let their kid go to the United States to study theater.
It's fresh in my mind because it's unrelated but related. Last week, I was at Yale. They had their big innovation summit, their Venture Innovation Summit. It's the first year they've had an arts track. Mm-hmm. And so they invited me to come in and speak at the arts track because the dynamics of that community, they're dying. The theaters are dying. The artists are quitting. Mm-hmm. They can't get the funding. And so they were asking me about creating a different type of funding mechanism for the arts that are more based on mutualistic economics, where the artists can share in the economics of other artists' projects so that they're not one in a billion. They're not all swinging for the fences. So I brought that up because the mutualism that community creates, which is the fundamental underpinning of insurance. And you know better than I that a lot of the insurance industry, they're getting out of insurance, right? They're steading much more toward wealth management.
That's right.
So many of our mutualistic, systemic, financial underpinnings, they're going away.
Yeah, that's right. It kind of connects back to your theory of goodwill. You know, after disasters and an era of pandemics and climate change, you need more cooperation than ever. Yes. So you need more mutualism than ever. Another Ashoka Fellow, the great labor organizer Sarah Horowitz, talks about the new mutualism that we need in society. The best systems in U.S. history were created when the federal government and the private sector invested in mutualistic systems, invested in mutualism. It's very alarming to see insurance companies retreating from large markets under the theory that the market demand won't be a success factor for them, that they're too stressed out. We actually need the opposite. We need larger and larger pools and larger mutual aid systems to help larger pools of people.
I mean, one of our audience members who interviewed me at about 5 years ago and who's speaking next, and so everyone should stay and listen to her session. But Ellen, you know, it's funny when you interviewed me. You know, one thing that you said to me that I didn't really understand, and I said, am I? Because I'm a CEO, private sector, private equity person. You said, James, you're a very effective community organizer. And I said, I am. And so what I realized that with Ashley Stewart, what we did after we got our house in order, I had to reconnect this new system to the old system, because you can't sustain a new system without having some symbiosis with existing systems. You know the movie Alien, when the alien comes out of Sigourney Weaver's chest? It's emergence theory, right? But you can't disband from the old systems. And so we created a mutualistic economy. So like the biggest tech companies and JP Morgan and Tim Ryan at Price Waterhouse, they really extended their hand to us. And we used capitalism, we exchanged capitalism, and they helped our company. They gave us services in kind, but we were paying for it through another pocket, if that makes sense. And so I realized after some thinking that, and the way that we got people to see all this, we produced shows. So literally the company was run like a unscripted
theater company.
Musical. The company was run as a musical. That's how I ran it. And so I imagine that your theater background, just getting people to see these intangible assets like goodwill and community, it's coming in handy, isn't it?
It does come in handy, yeah. Theater is just a way to help people believe in a story and make that story real, right? And the difference here is, in our line of work, once a story becomes real and people believe in it, it actually can change lives and run forever. It unlike a theater company, it doesn't just disband when the show is over, and then the rafters are taken away. But there is a lot of creative storytelling right at the heart of our work. Right at the beginning of any venture, you have to tell a story before anything is real. And you have to cast your actors who are going to bring it to life. And you have to run that story on cycles, just like a 5-act play, that help people believe it. You have to bring an audience along. A lot of times when a resilience force goes into a new town, a hurricane has just crashed into 5 counties. 80% of the housing stock is impacted. Every basement is flooded. Half the schools are shut. At that time, we tell a story about how it's possible to repair this place if the immigrants who are coming to town and the people who live there come together and cooperate. Over time, we can bring people along to a story about climate change, but that's not where you start. So very much like telling a story or running, or scripting a movie, you have to really plot out the conversation you're planning to have with your audience.
Are you filming this as you go?
Not yet. Maybe in the future.
Yeah, it's something that would be interesting. To
Yeah.
it's unscripted real-time filming. We did that. The whole company was basically filmed within filmed, and we shared it to the world literally on a daily basis. And people just started watching our company like it was a show.
What was the what were the responses?
Oh, I mean, the responses were. Here's the banal. Like our NPS score went from like 30 to 90. It's the high. But people started attending our sold out production 3,000 seat shows in Brooklyn. This was a apparel company with no Wi-Fi. So people anticipated where the business was going because they knew it was like a movie. They're like, oh, now you're going to register women to vote, aren't you? And we said, of course, that's where it's going. And so everyone followed along so that it became anticipatory. So a lot of the walls and barriers to innovation went away because people just said, of course, that's what you're going to do. And people were waiting for us, like in a marathon with water, people they were waiting for us. So I would love to see that. Like I'm trying to picture what you do, and I can picture it. I think it'd be really pretty cool to have the world see what you're doing. And
that would be really cool. Let's talk about that more.
Unscripted doc.
Yeah. I think
we're getting the
there's
wrap
a
up.
sign in the back that says, keep going, you're on a roll. But I think we should wrap up, right? Yeah. Great to talk to you, James.
Yeah, this was nice. Like, new friend.
A new friend.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's great to connect with you. I had a lot of fun. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.